the lack of predictability. You go in Friday and you don't know if you're going to be swamped with people needing stuff on Monday and Tuesday for the next week, or if nothing happens. And it's just, you try to arrange, you just try to arrange production, your man hours and everything. You don't want to tell your guys, hey, come in, we're working a full day, and have absolutely nothing happen. And you don't want to, if they want to work, you don't want to tell them, now, forget it, we don't think anything's going to happen, so, enjoy your long weekend. It's just frustrating. I'm a creature of habit. And it's like,
okay. So we could have saved a lot of time.
You sharpen your pencils, and you simply try to predict what is unpredictable, and there are real dollars and cents attached to it. So it's just wears me out.
If you say so, man, I tell you what, we could have saved a lot just saying I'm predictable. Everything's not predictable right now. I'm having a bad day. Thanks for asking. See how easy that was?
But when your mind is where mine is right now, the answers, you don't just roll it up. It's like, hey, you asking me how unpredictable it is? Let me spend 5 minutes telling you how unpredictable it is.
Well, I've got a way to help you with all of that. I've got a way to help you with that anxiety that's created because of the unpredictability. I've got a way to help you with all of your troubles, sir.
Kentucky bourbon.
Kentucky bourbon helps, but it doesn't do everything you want it to do because there's a lot of side effects with Kentucky bourbon, depending on how you drink it. No, House Speaker Greg Stumbo has announced that he will file a bill in this General Assembly session beginning next month to allow medical marijuana. There you go. Tell a doctor to say you've got anxiety and then go buy you some drugs.
Well, there you have it. We're zero tolerance, so, I don't think so. I don't think our insurance company is going to play along with that too well.
Well, you never know. If they pass it, they will. It is interesting though because
that means it's not criminal, but it doesn't mean that within the walls of a private sector company with private insurance,
right?
There's still somebody that can say, "Hey, we don't care if it's legal or not." It's not going. You're not coming to work with that in your system. Just like alcohol. Alcohol's perfectly legal. Don't show up for work drunk, please.
I hear you. Well, it makes it interesting because the Democrats have been the ones who have always fought anything to do with medical marijuana. Of course, we now have all kinds of states, Colorado, Washington, a whole bunch of them that have medical marijuana. And now Kentucky is going to bring it up this session. However, they did bring it up last session. But what's interesting to me is Greg Stumbo is kind of, I'm going to go down a conspiracy theory road. And I'll tell you why I brought it up. Because now Greg Stumbo is going to file this. He doesn't know if it's going to get through or not, but he sure is going to get plenty of play. I find it interesting because, now all of a sudden the Democrats who have been fighting this are now possibly for it. At the same time last year they were fighting the local option sales tax. Now this year it's the number one priority. Maybe they want everybody to get high so we don't see the taxes they're passing. I don't know. But
well, either that or maybe they're spending the tax revenue that Colorado's bringing in, and that would be a whole lot easier just to increase the tax revenue than it would be to actually, spend wisely. But I don't know. Medical marijuana, libertarian pedigree, I'm all for it. I've said it as a candidate. I think THC should be a drug we look into, a naturally occurring drug with minus a lot of the side effects that a lot of the synthetic drugs have. So, I'm very pleased with the fact they're actually looking at it, and I think actually my council person, Julie Denton, may have had something to do with that. She, brought it up last go-around, at least for experiments at U of L on seizures and stuff. So, I had some nice things about her, too. But,
that's the interesting thing.
Now, there are some studies going on, but
isn't that interesting, though? Because that just reinforces what I'm saying, though, because Julie Denton is a Republican. The Republicans have not really had any problems with medical marijuana. Greg Stumbo is the Speaker of the House, and he's a Democrat. He's one of the leaders who have been fighting against medical marijuana. So why now? Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to point that out to our audience.
I tell you, as far as why now, I'd say really nothing more than laziness. I think what we've got is I always one that wants to that wishes I could put words like innovative and leadership, honest leadership, innovative, and into government, and they're not. They're, we're far enough behind the eight ball now. We're far enough behind the curve. We've seen other states do it, so we're following their lead. That's all. It's just, Colorado did it, and it was funny for a while. Then we realized how much money was coming in, and we realized, hey, guess what? Maybe some other forms of crime fall off. And they say, hey, guess what? Maybe some other forms of drug abuse fall off. So, we're basically following Colorado's lead, and I think California's lead, as far as the medical goes. And next up, I sure as hell wish they would, do some decriminalization of it, and look at the same time at restorative justice, is where people who are convicted of nonviolent crimes do their time. They did the crime, did the time, and they can get their voting rights and such back. So, hopefully that's it. If we can't get there any other way, maybe we can get there that way at some point, legalizing a drug and then looking back and saying, okay, at the very least anybody that was convicted of it when it was illegal, for God's sake, it's not illegal now. So, give them the rights back.
I just find it very interesting. I tell you, because Larry Clark.
It's a lack of leadership. We are it's followership. We're following other states, and it's about time.
Well, I tell you, I'm not. I mean, of course, we're always following somebody. Kentucky's scared to lead on anything, or we'd already had industrial hemp. But it is very, very interesting though, because last year they're against it. This year they're for it. Maybe they saw something from the recent November elections. In the November elections, the Democrats got their asses handed to them in the House and the Senate. And Kentucky's scared that wave is going to reach us, so that maybe the Democrats here in Kentucky are going to open up a little bit more to try to protect themselves in the next couple of elections. I don't know. But I find it interesting that Darrell Owens is going to take over as majority speaker. Larry Clark has stepped down from that position. Darrell Owens right here in Louisville is going to take over that position. Darrell Owens is one of the most entrenched Democratic mafia representatives we've ever had in Louisville. And, he's also has decided that the number one goal of the House, the state House this year, is the local option sales tax, or LOST. So in order to get that, that's what it is. That's the acronym for local option sales tax, right? So, that is the big thing. The people who are going to benefit from the local option sales tax, or the people who are going to get screwed, I should say, are basically Louisville and Lexington. Those are the two cities that they really want this in because of how much tax revenue we bring up. So, I find it very interesting that all of a sudden, because they want this lost so bad, is to trade off medical marijuana. I personally have always supported medical marijuana. I got involved with medical marijuana fight a few years ago, and I'll be honest with you, it's really personal for me. When I look at something like Charlotte's Web, which is a liquid form of the THC and marijuana content, and what it has been able to do with special needs children and those who suffer from seizures and stuff. I've got a special needs godchild, and I was able to see the miracle that this Charlotte's Web created for these children in Colorado, and it made me a very big proponent of medical marijuana because I could relate to it firsthand. So it's interesting to me because they have been denying any possibilities of this, but all of a sudden now they're going to focus on a new tax that's going to affect, the city, that's going to drive more business out of here, or at least more consumer goods won't be served, because now you've got a $9 an hour minimum wage, a local minimum wage, which I hope gets struck down, in the appeals process. All of these things come together, and it's all about one thing, bringing more and more money. So are they caving on medical marijuana because it's the right thing to do, or are they trying to do the bait and switch? You give us the local option sales tax, and we'll give you medical marijuana. You see what I mean? I'm going to be really interested to see what Republicans do.
Well, it'll be interesting because, and a lot of it comes down to the media. It's, they accuse them of being lazy too. So it'll be, it may give them some cover. They may, as government does sometimes, kind of slip through the local option sales tax, let it be a paid six kind of deal with the local media, which is, lazy and complicit in many cases. And, that way they can have it's immediately a tempestuous debate over medical marijuana, and go up. It's kind of an inflammatory topic, although most people are in favor of it. I agree with you. I think it could give them some cover, gets everybody talking about medical marijuana while local option sales tax nearly goes through. The Republicans protest, but the media doesn't write anything about it, that kind of stuff, and it's just, it's something that a lot of people have strong feelings about on both sides. Most people favor it. So, yeah, it's a gimme. I doubt it'll pass, but it'll give people something to talk about. And on a positive note, it starts the dialogue up again from beyond, what Julie Denton proposed last year for the studies at U of L.
Right.
But and that's a good thing. But yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a bait and switch. I think it's a gimme to a lazy ass media, so they can run 15 to 20 stories about medical marijuana. And a lot of them will be canned stories from other publications and other news outlets.
Or press releases, yeah. I mean, and that's the whole thing. And when you look at, you talk about marijuana, we're talking about legalizing marijuana in Kentucky. Finally, they're going to do it for whatever reason, or at least they're looking at doing it for whatever reason. And you mentioned a minute ago about, maybe this will help us with curtail other drugs. And there's a reason that's important to point that out, too. Bashir, of course, has just went on record. There was a story on him late last week from WFPL. But Bashir says that he feels positive that we're going to get a bill passed that's going to strengthen the state's heroin laws. Now, here's the thing for me. This is all he basically said. He said, it just appears to be a growing bipartisan relief that we can get something done on this. I'm going to sit down, so he basically told the whole world the same thing. I'm going to continue talking about something with no plan. But it's interesting because we're talking about heroin overdose deaths in Kentucky of about 230 a year. That's what they were in 2013. He's talking about they expect that to increase by more than 12%. Okay, so that's all well and good. I really don't have much problem with that, except we've got heroin laws in place that aren't being enforced. We've got 230. I mean, the thing for me is this. They continue putting more and more laws in place for some sort of so-called drug epidemic. Yes, heroin's a serious drug. Yes, we've lost 230 people last year. But out of the millions that live in Kentucky, is that a big number? Are we going to, are we using this once again as a way for them to scam some more money to act like they're doing something about drugs while they're still out there playing the games with all this other political stuff, like the Lost? I've just got some problems with the fact that they continue trying to come back to the same thing when they're not reinforcing or doing anything about what we've got to work with. Our heroin laws are pretty damn good. You get caught with heroin, go to jail. Get treatment, do whatever. I mean, there are all kinds of opportunities available. And we are not, once again, in this so-called war on drugs, whether it's marijuana, heroin, or anything else, we are not doing anything to enforce what we already have. So why do we continue wasting such valuable time in a 2 or 3 month session of our Kentucky Congress over something that really is minuscule overall in the big picture?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's there, and it's destructive. But again, another thing along you're sucking me into it, man. This conspiracy theory thing.
That's my job.
If they can generate enough headlines, we can also probably excuse, sarcasm here. We could probably excuse the media from reporting on the fact that they never really did fix the pension. So, it's like, hey, we're busy here arguing about medical marijuana and arguing about gay marriage and arguing about things that don't have anything to do with whether, you'll be able to feed yourself in your retirement or not. So
right.
I hope you're entertained.
Well, that's it, and of course one of the things that the biggest thing that they're trying to push is nothing more than another drug company narcotic. They're trying to push something called Narcan. Van Ingram, he's the executive director of the Kentucky's Office of Drug Control Policy, is saying that one of the things that they hope to be able to do is create a wider availability of Narcan. Narcan is essentially a drug that you inject that's supposed to stop the effects of the opiate. So if you get ready to overdose on heroin or something, somebody injects you with this Narcan, it's supposed to immediately halt the effects of any of it so that you don't die. And that's, I guess, a good thing. But, I mean, I know it's a good thing saving lives, but at the same time, what is this going to do? Now they're going to bring another overpriced drug into the market just like they did OxyContin. What was that one we brought in to offset the OxyContin? Now that's a big deal. We've got all of these different things out there. They're never doing anything to address the problem. They continue to try to treat a symptom and create a new drug that's real expensive that we can't afford and don't need. If 230 people a year are dying from heroin because we're not enforcing the laws we've got, Why do we continue making it worse? That just drives me completely nuts. It just really, really does. Yeah, you mentioned the media, Ed, and I want to put this out there because this is something as well. But when you talk about the media and we talk about, like they're going to continue, going to other people and repeating the same story from the same source in 1,000 different outlets, mainstream media has an agenda. The local media has an agenda, and they're all funded, by corporate dollars, if you will. But what's fascinating, and most people don't know this, and this is really what a major problem is. This is why it's so important to pay attention to Hearst and all the other people who own media. But back in 1983, we had about 50 corporations that controlled the news media right here in the U.S. What has ultimately happened, back in the 70s and 80s, of course, in the early 70s, we had Watergate, Bernstein, and all those guys. You had Watergate, you had all these different things, you had all this different media, you had real in-depth investigative stories. And we continued that through the 80s. But one of the biggest problems that we have today, and this is why we see so many recycled stories, just like the USA Today stories get put on every Gannett newspaper as if it's original news. Just look at the Courier Journal, 3 pages every day. But we have went from 50 corporations down to 6 big corporations. We went from primarily 50 media corporations down to about 6. You've got, think about these names: Time Warner, Walt Disney, Viacom, Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, CBS, and NBC. Those are the big 6 that make all of the news and entertainment in the U.S. They're essentially tied to everything, and we wonder why mainstream media is so controlled.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not only ownership. I mean, that does tend to, that consolidation like that tends to eliminate competition. But I think it's a news entertainment industry, and just like reality TV and everything else, they're taking a look at, how cheaply can they put a product out there and keep you entertained, and keep it relatively popular to where they could sell advertising. And it's just, that to me, I'm convinced that's what it is. I mean, just like our local media, the stories are, every once in a while a good one comes up, and there's a couple of reporters that I like, but for the most part, it's canned, it's puff, and if there's any doubt in your mind of what the paper, say like the Little Courier Journal, exists for anymore, just witness that ahead of certain shopping days, whether you subscribe to the paper or not, you get one, because it's all about advertising. It's not, they're not. I'm sure there's some idealistic people, but I'm sure they get pinched. Their stories get pinched, and it's about putting out a product every day. If it's broadcast news every few hours, that is easy to produce and keeps people's eyeballs on it. And that's really all they're in. They're not trying to, I think
let's
look
at
agenda.
let's look at a bigger picture here.
I think there's sometimes a certain slant, but I think the news media, for the most part, is looking at how easily and how rapidly and how cost effectively it can put stories out there. It's not trying to actually get anything accomplished, fix anything, or anything like that.
What if?
Yeah.
What if? I mean, let's look at this realistically. I mean, as a business, you're a business owner. I'm a business owner. As a business, of course, we're going to look at the most cost-effective manner to run our business, because we have to pay the bills, we have to produce an income, right? That's just the nature of the beast. Right. That's a business. But when you think about it, when you look at these big 6, when you consider that the media, all of the United States media, over 300 million people have access to this media, and it's conglomerated down to a big 6. Think about this, all right? When that kind of power is concentrated, and don't be anyone fooled that the media is not a powerhouse. When that kind of power is concentrated through your television, your radio, through your print media, thank God we have online media like we do, because we can be an alternative to all of this. But you are programming things to tell people, you can control their thoughts. And when you can control their thoughts, you can kind of generate them to where you want to go, right? You kind of lead them to where you want that to be. And when we look at that, think about it. Think about the stuff that's constantly being pounded into our heads. Let's look at the most recent political situation, if you will. Barack Obama released 3 Cuban terrorists and spies for 1 U.S. spy. Anybody who thinks this guy is innocent is lying to themselves. While that was going on, the news media never reported the $50 billion that it cost us to do that. He gave up $50 million, not billion. He gave up $50 million and 3 spies to get this 1 spy back from Cuba. Now, as soon as that hit the airwaves, what happened? Sony is going to drop the Interview movie because of threats from North Korea that didn't exist. North Korea has since been proven to have nothing to do with those threats, and the Interview was supposedly going to be canceled from being shown on Christmas Day, only to find out Christmas Eve, well, we changed our mind again, and now we're going to do it. But it shifted our attention to an entertainment movie that was probably a piece of junk. It wouldn't have made a dime anyway. It shifted our attention back to North Korea, who doesn't have the power to kill a mouse with a mousetrap right now outside of their border, okay? And it took the attention away from what I consider to be treasonous activity by releasing these Cuban terrorist spies and paying to do so. We just negotiated and bought the release of 1 American spy. We did the same thing with Bo Bergdahl. We gave up 5 terrorists and billions of dollars to Qatar to release Bo Bergdahl, who was an Army deserter. These are treasonous things. This violates every principle the United States is about. But the media baited and switched us over to this idiotic movie that didn't mean a hill of beans and tried to make us make North Korea relevant again so that they could pull this off behind our backs. So when we talk about the concentration and power of 6 media corporations that control most of this, isn't that alarming?
Oh yeah. Like I say, it's to me, it's no competition. That's the problem. They can all conspiring becomes real easy because there's so few people to talk to, and they're not going to break rank. Like I say, just by the same token, it's an easy product. There's no competition. I mean, you have some competition with Fox versus you have the ultra right wing is probably not telling the truth 100% of the time, and you got the left wing that's not telling the truth 100% of the time. But most of the stories are pretty well canned, and there's just no competition. Nobody's out there trying to one up the other guys, and that I think is the biggest problem. It's like in a lot of towns. You've got, like our town, Louisville, we've got 1 newspaper, and that's it. And there's no competition. They can do a bunch of jack-off stories and stuff, and it's not like anybody's going to buy another paper. It seems like every month fewer people are buying that paper, but, my God, if they had competition, they'd been out of business a long time ago. But
sure.
I just think it's a lack of competition, and I think it's just like soda pop and fast food and everything else. It's lack of competition of providers is they can afford to be lazy. They can afford to be cheap.
But that's the whole thing because
there's nothing that anybody can do about it.
Well, and that's the whole thing because in 1983 we had 50 different corporations that essentially did this. Now we're down to 6. So all these other corporations have been absorbed, bought out and everything else to make these 6 mega conglomerates, if you will. And really the reality is when you have that kind of power, when you control what Americans watch, when you control what Americans hear, when you control what Americans read, you can control what people think. All right, and that's exactly what it is. And if you look at this in context, we talk about the entertainment value. They don't call this programming for nothing. It's not a TV program for nothing. They're programming to you to, we've used the term in the past about brainwashing, and that's exactly what a lot of this is, and that's what the American people, that's why we have become such sheep, in my opinion. Even on the Internet, even on the Internet. I mean, if you look at the Internet, even as little as 5 years ago, Ed, look at the amount of choices that you had and the way that you were getting information. Now, 5 years later, everything is being driven by Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, period. The end. They're giving you all of their advertising. They're taking all of their revenue, and they are buying out all these little companies. Sun Microsoft, that was sold out many years ago. That's a lot of these microsystems started with. When you look at fast players like Adobe and all of that stuff, all these things get absorbed. So you've got one corporate empire. Now, I love business. I love the free market, and I'm not sitting here complaining about corporations, and actually one another buying each other out. Not at all in the least, including media. But I do believe that there has to be a way for us to force media to do their job. We can quit watching NBC, and they're going to lose money, but let's face facts. Look at MSNBC right now, and Rachel Manchild, as our good friend Dale the Truth refers to her. But look at Rachel Maddow. And you look at the way MSNBC has been going. You look at them having Al Sharpton having his own show. We'll get into some more of him later. But when you look at all of these things, MSNBC is the lowest rated of all of them. They're not even meeting overhead, okay? But because they're owned by this corporate conglomerate, they don't have to worry about real news. They are told what to say. We know Cheryl Atkinson and a few others left CNN because Barack Obama and the president's office were buying advertising and telling them what they were allowed to say and what they weren't. You're going to report what we want you to do or you won't get any access. So, the politicians are playing ball with the media. When you go beyond that and look into that, let's look at a Supreme Court story today. All right, this is what happens. This media can get this big because when you get into things like the Supreme Court is even monopolized by big corporations. There's a new report out by Reuters that shows, well, you know what? We're going to take the bottom of the hour break, and we'll get into that when we get back, because this is going to be a minute conversation. I think you really want to talk about it. Let's take a break, and we'll come back to that one. Folks, call-in numbers, as always, 858-683-1326, 502-805-0334. If you guys are in the listening queue, make sure you hit that number 1. We'll get you on air. We will be right back. You're listening to the Ed Springston Show right here at the MVM Radio Network. Stay tuned.
First impressions aren't the most important thing. They're the only thing. At Ernie's Print Shop, we'll produce what you need to represent your company professionally. Right now, you can get 1,000 full-color business cards, 1,000 4x6 postcards, or a 3x5 banner for just $60. You choose. Check us out at Ernie'sPrintShop.com. Ernie's Print Shop. Over 50 years, one source, one solution. Ernie'sPrintShop.com. 502-969-8585.
Being a victim of crime is no joke, but you do have options that can help you avoid becoming a victim. I'm Ed Springston of the My View Matters radio show, and on behalf of myself and co-host Ed Martin, I urge each of you to help us fight against crime. You can do your part by calling Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE. Since 1982, Crime Stoppers has helped get over 23,000 criminals off the street with your help. Working together, we can make a difference to take our streets back. Please call Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE, or you can visit them online at www.582clue.com. Remember, Crime Stoppers always offers up to a $1,000 reward. Get involved and help make a positive change in your neighborhood. Thanks.
Advertisers, here's a great way to reach a quality audience. Get heard on My View Matters and make some noise in the marketplace.
Email myviewmatters at AOL.com for advertising opportunities. Make a sound investment.
Okay. We are back, folks. Calling numbers, as always, 858-683-1326, 502-805-0334. I tell you, we're going into break, and we've been talking a little bit about this media conglomerate, how we went from 50 corporations to 6 corporations that essentially take care of all the media in America, print, read, whatever. We look at all of that, and Ed, you were making the argument that, that's business. There's no problem with it. It's entertainment. They're doing this to make money and profits. Of course, I'm taking the position that this is all, pure programming the sheeple, which is what I believe. And when I look at this, then I had to start going just a next step further, and I mentioned it right before we went to commercial. When you look at this, let's look at some of the effects of this media, and let's look at some of the effects of how corporations have forced the politicians like Obama and others before him to tell the media what they're allowed to report and what they're not if they want access. Let's talk about the U.S. Supreme Court for a minute, if you will. Citizens United was one of the most divisive, in my opinion, recent rulings about the Supreme Court over the last few years, and it's all about, campaign money. We've created these super PACs and everything else where you can give unlimited contributions to essentially buy politicians, because that is what you're doing. And I think a lot of that has to do with this. There's a story coming out today. I'll post this for you guys into the chat room. But there's a story coming out today out of the New York Times, and they do a breakdown on the Supreme Court since about 2004, I believe it was. Anyway, the Supreme Court gets about 10,000 petitions every year, Ed. Out of that 10,000, they only accept somewhere around 75 of them. Now, what's really interesting about that is trying to figure out why the Supreme Court accepts a certain petition or why they don't. and when this, according to this story by Reuters, there's a good reason why they choose some over others. When you look at all of these, there is a very small and well-connected group of lawyers that seem to argue consistently in front of the Supreme Court. And when you break that down even further and you look at these so-called top litigators in the country, we find out that most of these litigators, almost all of them in fact, work mainly for who? Corporate clients. They've either clerked for the justices, they know the justices personally, or they socialize with the justices at corporate events. And miraculously, 75 out of 10,000 petitioners, less than 0.5% of all the lawyers who petition the court that involve these cases, take these cases to the Supreme Court. Out of any of the lawyers that are involved in that small percentage, almost half of the time the justices hear the cases from these super lawyers, if you will, that are connected. That is not by coincidence, is it?
Oh, no. I mean, it's not totally by conspiracy. I mean, as with anything, you've dealt with lawyers, I've dealt with lawyers. When you have a case going to the Supreme Court, you pick a hired gun. So, I mean, I'm sure that has some to do with it. But, yeah, there's also, there's definitely a group of lawyers whom, I was once told it takes anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 or more to get a case before the Supreme Court. Average citizen can't do that. So, yeah, absolutely. The costs and stuff, you got to get backing, whether it's ACLU or whether it's, major corporations. Average guy doesn't have that kind of money. So,
but see, that's the thing, though.
If you need to get the financing to go to the Supreme Court, you've got to align yourself with somebody with deep pockets, and somebody with deep pockets already has a lawyer that, they have a guy in mind, and they control it. They control it via just the excessive legal costs involved with getting a case up there.
But I mean, that's exactly it, though. Let's look at the realistics here, because, the litigation costs are so high because you're basically forced. If you know that there are only 8 lawyers, for the most part, who are going to be allowed to talk to the Supreme Court this year, and of those 8 lawyers, 2 of these guys know the Supreme Court justices, go to all the events, and they're all good friends. They party with them and everything else. And you know that these Supreme Court justices are going to allow those friendships, even though they're supposed to be impartial, are going to allow those friendships to aid them in pulling those cases forward over something that may or may not be better. Then that lawyer can essentially charge anything he wants to guarantee you're going to get to the Supreme Court. He may not guarantee a win or a loss, but he can guarantee you're going to get heard, and he can charge you anything he wants to. And that's where that litigation costs the $500,000 and $1 million comes from. You get a lawyer who has all these connections to the justices, which should have nothing to do whatsoever with whether a case should be heard or not. But because he parties with the judge, you got a guy that goes out there and parties with Chief Justice John Roberts. Hey, John, dude, let's smoke a joint. We're getting ready to legalize that anyway. So you're sitting there drinking Kentucky bourbon, smoking a joint with Chief Justice John Roberts and saying, hey, I got this guy and this is the case number, man. Can you guys listen? Oh, yeah, dude, we'll put it on the docket. Bring it on up. And it's a done deal. It didn't cost him $500,000 or $1 million for that daggone conversation with John Roberts to pull a favor. But that, unfortunately, is what we're doing. And that scares the hell out of me. It really does. So I don't know how we look at this, but I think it's very interesting that we have to look at that dynamic, because we expect our chief justices in our Supreme Court to be impartial, do we not?
Well, we do, and we also expect our politicians to represent us. But again, just like in campaigns and everything else, once things become so prohibitively expensive that it begins to limit. Yeah, and I'm for the free market, and if you have money, I don't care if you spend it on politics or not, but it does have a corrupting effect. When somebody tells you, the further along the court system you get, the more expensive it gets, that is justice denied. Not only, it's just in politics, it's access denied, and you can't, like TTT, you have to have at least $50,000, and we're not going to have you on our debates or whatever the hell that number was. When we start making things prohibitively expensive, be it access to political races, access to the media, access to the courts, it ceases to be what it is supposed to be. So I think the expense comes first. I think the expense, throughout. I think just the expense of getting access begins to limit things, and then once it's limited to a small clientele, a small group of people, a small group of corporations, I think you find the problem you run into then is like you said, they hang out and party. Why? Because
they're not talking to that one woman about eating booty.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead, caller. Milwaukee, you're on the air.
What's up, man? I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, man. What's up?
What can we do for you?
Mac Doublehead ass nigga. Snow cone.
Anyway, Ed, go ahead.
Anyway, that was, as I like to point out, that was the smartest of his mother's children right there.
Yeah, really. that was the part that didn't fall down the leg.
That was the brains. That was the brains of the family right there.
There you go.
You can believe that.
There you go.
But yeah, I think that sometimes you run into just a dynamic that once it's limited to a small group of people, small group of lawyers with access, yeah, they naturally are going to become friends. I'm not necessarily sure that the friendship begins and then the access follows. I think the access begets the friendship. I think you have Supreme Court justices that are familiar with only a handful of lawyers because those are the ones that can get the funding to get the case all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, I understand that. Like I said, though, I just think that it makes our court system cheap. I really do, because here we have all these corporations. They own the media. Now the corporations own the Supreme Court, and we wonder why the people are sheeple. Why? Because we are being programmed to do and believe whatever we're told by the media, which is most of the mainstream media, quite honestly, folks, is all garbage. They're not telling you the truth. They're trying to take you down a path to believe and follow them. And that's the problem. And then we look at the corporation going to the Supreme Court. So, it's just a serious situation to me overall. And I can't help but wonder how much justice has not been served. How many cases that are really out there in the Supreme Court that could make a difference in people's lives are not being heard, because now we know that even the Supreme Court is showing favoritism to corporate clients. I mean, since when did corporate America, get the right to own our justice system as well as everything else?
Yep.
It's a scary thing.
No, absolutely. I mean, I had, a personal story when I was duking it out with certain people over ballot access. Got to the state court of appeals level, And I could do that per se, but then once it starts going up, like you say, then access starts becoming limited as just a factor of money. And I'm not sure at what level it starts, but at some point, and I'm not sure the corporations engineer it that way, but it just after a while it starts to become that, because it is expensive to where the only players left in the game, whether by design or just whether by by accident, is the people. It is the organizations or the people with lots and lots of money to go up there and slug it out. And when that's the case, like you said, there'd be somebody who's going to argue against Citizens United, because obviously the corporations want it. So where is somebody going to get the no doubt millions of dollars that it's going to take to shut that down?
Well, we know it's not going to be shut down. We know it's not going to be shut down because the Supreme Court already, said Citizens United was legal. Why would you want to spend millions of dollars arguing against a Supreme Court who's ruling in favor of corporations that own them?
Well,
it's a cycle.
Exactly.
Of what I'm getting at.
And again, like I said, it's sometimes I'll stop shy of saying that the corporations own them. I'd say the corporations and the extremely well-financed individuals are the only ones with access to them. So that gives the appearance of being owned, because, it's like, hey, does a rich guy own the golf course he plays on? No. But if you're not allowed to play on it, it kind of looks like it from the outside looking in. Yeah, if he owns it, you don't. So sometimes I just think it gives the outward appearance. I think it's just a matter of the access and the legal profession. Just have by, like I say, I'm not going to say by design or by accident, but just by the way it's put together, access is limited because access is expensive.
Well, I think it's interesting, to say the least. Okay, so we look at all of this though, all right, and then we have to look at once again, we started this conversation with the Supreme Court kind of went there because of the mainstream media and the way that they dodge and deflect. And I used the interview and everything else in North Korea as a way to dodge and deflect the whole Cuban situation. But there was something else that went on last week during Christmas week as well. And at the height of the North Korea lie, at the height of the Sony lie about their movie, The Interview, the Obama administration was going about something quietly behind the scenes. They were trying to do everything they could to get two Islamist organizations off of a terror list. The Council on American Islamic Relations and the Muslim American Society are both listed as Islamist organizations by the Islamist money in every political database. So what essentially they do, what essentially these databases do, is they track any serious political spending by figures that are linked to these Muslim groups or these Islamist organizations. These reps from CARE and MAS met with senior U.S. government officials in the Obama administration just right before Christmas because they were included on the UAE's, the United Arab Emirates, official list of terrorist organizations. And the Obama administration is now aiding to try to get them off of that list. Is that what we're supposed to be doing? Is that our job, to involve ourselves in another nation's situation like that?
I think if you want off the list, just like anything else, you need to plead your case with the people who put you on the list. So, if United Arab Emirates put them on the list, that's, as the old Polish saying goes, not my circus, not my monkeys. That's not our fight. We got enough problems. If UAE put them on there, if the UAE put them on the list, then let them convince the UAE to take them off the list and leave us the hell out of it.
Well, see, and that's the thing, because, of course, the Council on American Islamic Relations and the Muslim American Society are all are both U.S. organizations, if you will. And the Obama administration meets regularly with representatives of these guys, and both of these groups, the CARE and the MAS, have been linked and proven to be linked to funding for terrorists. They clearly are terrorist organizations. The United Arab Emirates official list them as such for a reason, because all the money is linked back to these guys, funneling and channeling money to terrorist groups and terrorist activities. So why is it that America under the Obama administration is okay with allowing ourselves to have meetings with representatives of terrorist organizations and then petition other nations to take these terrorist organizations off of their watch list. Why is that acceptable? Do you think George Bush would have ever gotten away with that? I don't.
Not by a long shot. Yeah, I don't think it's acceptable by a long shot. Now, granted, in this era of, flipping people and conspiracy theories, maybe there's a possibility that we figured